I would say, it's interesting what Kate just talked about Apple. As we've talked before in the past, Apple, Microsoft, Tesla's where people turn before to sort of, buy for confidence. What's lacking right now, Becky, is that individual name for people to buy in confidence. What we're seeing instead, particularly over the last couple of weeks, as we've seen this down move, is more people trying to bottom pick, if you will, on some of the individual names. I think about like a Shopify, an AMC that have hit 52-week lows over the last few days. You're starting to see some interest there. Or stocks that have really sold off pretty hard recently, like Coinbase or Roblox, people, again, buying there. So it's really interesting how I think, mindset of the retail trader has changed over the last couple of weeks. And when they are looking to buy, I do think there's still interest. So that's really the positive. But where people are buying is more of the broad-based ETFs, that is QQQ, SPY. There's just not an individual name that gets people very excited right now.
So are you kind of seconding what we just heard from Kate, this idea that some of the stocks that have held up so well, like an Apple, there's just not as much interest in right now? There's not as much support as there has been the last few months?
Absolutely. What we used to see is people adding more to the position as we went down in those types of stocks. We're not really seeing people, as I said, add to the positions. The positive news is you're not seeing people giving up and selling out either. I think they're just in this sort of show me type atmosphere. We had a nice little bounce earlier in the week, but again, immediately followed by selling. So there's nothing that's getting them confidence. We'll see if we continue with the bounce today, it being the end of quarter, et cetera. And I think the other thing to keep in mind for people, Becky, is that, if you look at what's going on in the market, it's telling you it's going to be volatile. And I think people have a little bit of, fear, if you will, of that. When you're talking to 32 VIX, which you have right now, it's implying a 2% S&P 500 move a day. That's not something we're certainly used to. And so, again, I think people are, being smart in that they're saying, okay, I'm not quite sure, so maybe going to broad-based indexes makes some more sense, or broad-based ETFs does some of the individual names, because, the individual names, until we see earnings again, and especially after last night, what we saw with Nike, which tends to be popular among retail, I think people are just going to hold back a little bit more as we head into this earnings season, so that it's going to be a little bit of a show me type of attitude out of folks.
Hey, JJ, since we keep comparing this to pre-pandemic, the pre-pandemic market, I'm curious, when you think about the influx of retail investors that came in during the pandemic with the stimulus checks and everything else, are those same retail investors still in this market? Are they up in this market? Do they still have cash? What are you seeing?
Yeah, Andrew, I see people still participating. Obviously, not necessarily at the level that they were before. It's interesting, Andrew. I think if you look at what's happened on the clients right now, you're seeing a larger group at the top that's participating more frequently than you did pre-pandemic. But that next level, so to speak, of people who are participating on a fairly frequent level during the COVID, when they may have been home all the time, or there was more of a straight up type market, that group of people is participating much less frequently. So we have had a lot of people who, have enjoyed learning about the market and have participated more. But I think it's that middle group that's usually, as you know, the larger group that has scaled back on their participation level, still has positions on, et cetera. And that's part of the group I'm talking about with Apple and Microsoft, et cetera. They have the positions, they're just not adding to it.